Brummett. He's Ali Alberigo, and this is the School Owner Talk podcast. Hello again, Dwayne Brummett here with Ali Alberigo, and Ali, take two, because I messed up on the first one, right?
Yeah, that's okay. Everybody probably didn't see it, so they weren't ready. Now they just thought we were a little late, I think.
Well, it's funny. I was sitting there broadcasting it on my own school page.
Yeah, weird, right?
Yep.
We definitely we don't want our parents listening to how we run our schools because
know what?
Well, I was going to say, but people just get the wrong idea.
They do. And although our topic today, that it might have actually been fine, but anyway, because we're going to talk about the role of the martial arts in personal, development or personal empowerment, and then obviously mental resilience as well. We've often talked about the fact that we as martial arts school owners really, I believe, and I think you believe as well, that we're the last line of defense for our kids, especially in our society, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting. I am reading a book, listening to a book, audio book, and it's called On Jiu-Jitsu. And it's a book written about a guy who's a BJJ guy under Sensei Almeida, famous jiu-jitsu practitioner, BJJ practitioner. But the book is really good. Like, I think you'd like it. It's a short book, maybe about an hour and 40 minutes on audio, but it very spiritual. Like, it talks about the jiu-jitsu practice, more about what you get out of the benefits of rolling continuously and grappling, and they call it rounds and time in and what that does for a person's resilience. And one word they use a lot, which we don't use as much, I don't think, in our industry, which should be used more, is courage. The word courage, because we want people to go to a tournament. They don't want to do it. They're not sure. You need to develop courage, right? To be able to stand up, do what's right, do what's uncomfortable, and so on. So I love this topic, what you're talking about today.
I think we do a great job with confidence, meaning that we talk about confidence.
Right.
But courage and confidence, I think, are different things.
Yeah. Well, do we I'm really you and I, before we started the podcast, we were chatting a little bit about, our lives and our dojos and the times and all that stuff. Right. And I wonder sometimes, I often say to myself, I have some students that just competed. And I'm trying to get my fighters to fight in sparring divisions off of their lead leg. So I often feel like Rocky in Rocky 1, where he has that big speech with that girl and he's talking to her about not, getting the wrong impression and yada, yada, yada. He goes through this big speech, a big part of the first Rocky. Then when he's all done, she goes in her apartment and Rocky's walking down the block and he opens the door and yells out, "Hey, Rocky." And he turns very proudly because he feels like he had some impact on the girl with his wisdom. And she goes, "Screw you, Rocky," and slams the door. And then he, that's almost I feel like that sometimes. I'll talk till I'm blue in the face, give advice to parents, give advice to students, fight off the lead leg. I tell my students, we just had a tournament. They're all fighting off the rear leg again. None of the stuff that I've been drilling with them, practicing with them, talking to them, it's out the window, right? So I wonder if they hear us, or is it just that we're not practicing it enough and not drilling it in so that becomes their natural movement? It's frustrating. I bet you that the instructors are out there. They'll feel similarly that it's a difficult thing to mentor.
Well, it is. And, it's my phrase now when I've had to say something over and over and over again to someone is that lessons are repeated until they're learned.
Right.
And I just tell them, so for instance, I've got a contract that every Wednesday, in fact, actually, when we finish our podcast, I hop out of here real quick because it's about a 20-minute drive.
Right.
But I go to a school where the kids have been kicked out of regular school.
Okay.
And now they're in this school. We're doing a martial arts program in there. And I kind of do my little Senate sermons at the end of class. And at the beginning of the first week that I was there, I really wanted to build a rapport first, but then I just told them, I said, you do realize that lessons are repeated until they're learned.
Right.
And they just kind of looked at me, and I go, let me ask you a question. Have you ever had anything happen in your life and it's happened more than once? Like it keeps repeating. And you're like, why in the world is this happening to me?
Again. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were like, yeah. And I said, well, rather than just getting frustrated at it, which I understand the frustration, why don't you ask yourself the question, what's the lesson that I need to learn here so that this is not repeated again?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you should have seen like the other teach, because I can't be there in there alone.
Right.
So the other teachers that are in there, and they're like shaking their head like, yes.
Yeah.
And so I think for us, the empowerment that we are able to give and share to our students, it would be interesting to interview the students and the parents. I wish we could have, maybe we should have asked some parents to be on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, didn't we do that one time with one of your families, a mother, a student, years and years and years ago? We interviewed the mom.
Well, we did one during COVID because she was a homeschool parent, and it was like everybody had to be a homeschool parent. Remember?
No, this I think was just about a parent that had actually had their kids in your program for quite some time and talked about the benefits and what she got out of it. And I remember.
Oh yeah.
Way back when.
Yeah.
But I often scratch my head. Like I'll talk to parents about whatever. Like for example, right now I'm with a good amount of my people come unprepared to class. So I made an unprepared letter. The last few weeks, I think I've mentioned it. I've given it out, and it's interesting because like say 9 out of 10 accept it well. And there's always one that gets mad at me. In fact, I had one dad who's going to pull his kid out because he doesn't like the fact that, it's my fault that I want them to have their sparring gear. And, then I make them bring it, and he hasn't bought it yet, and his kid's unprepared. And I'm like, you know what? I even do payment plans on sparring gear to make it affordable to people so they can pay it off as they go. But he's mad at me. It's like when your kid fails math in school, maybe the teacher does suck, but it's not their fault that your kid's stupid. It's your fault as a parent because you're not putting in the extra effort. Yeah, the teacher sucks. So what do I do? Accept the fact that my daughter's going to be stupid? Or do I go out and get her, which I did, a tutor and relatives and people to help her because I want her to be prepared. I don't care what the odds are or what cards I've been dealt. I'm going to make sure I make it work.
Or nowadays you get on the internet and you look at a video and figure out how the problem's supposed to be done.
I tried that. I couldn't do it. I'm bad at math.
Well, but I guess what I'm saying is not everyone can afford a tutor.
Right. I agree. And by the way, sometimes they do that for free, right? Like they give tutors away for free. But what I'm saying is preparation, right? So we talked about it. Which I always do. That I always kind of go off on a tangent, right? And now I'm in a whole nother baseball game. We're talking about a movie. But what you had mentioned, courage and self-esteem, right? Like those are the two words. Like, how do we teach? Like, what do you do, or what do you think you should do to teach those characteristics? Because they're not common character traits. You're not born with courage. You're not born with, confidence. Like, what do you do in TriStar Martial Arts? Which, by the way, I taught at your school via Zoom, and you had like 30 kids on the floor, and they're so cool, so respectful, so focused. Like, so you got it down, and I'm very proud that I was able to be zoomed in to teach at your dojo. But how do you do that? What do you think? Like, what is it?
Well, I guess one of the biggest things I've always fallen on is that, or followed, is I want my students to respect me for my personality, not my position.
Right.
Because if they only respect my position, they'll do what I ask them to do, but there's going to be a lot of resentment. And eventually, I know everybody quits, but they're going to quit a lot faster.
Yeah.
But if they respect my personality, then we're going to get a lot more done. When I make suggestions, when I make corrections, when I actually scold them, they know it's from a position of love,
right,
that I care about them, and I
right,
want to see them succeed. So I'll give you a perfect example. There was a girl. Well, she is a girl, meaning that she's still with us. Is that she was not learning her. Well, let's start with her belt tying. She couldn't tie her belt. And somebody in my system had passed her from white belt to yellow belt. She couldn't tie it. So at yellow belt, I pulled her out, put her along the side. I said, you're going to tie that belt, and you're going to tie it the whole class. And, you're going to, every time you tie it, you're going to say, done, sir. And I'm going to go and look at it. All right, good. Untie it again. Go. And she literally did that the whole class. Now that girl knows how to tie her belt.
Yeah.
She has had different times that I've worked with her and I've flunked her. She didn't pass.
Right.
Now I bring all that up because I've also done that with other kids, and I had an opportunity where this girl was in a class where these other kids were basically not performing like they should. And so I pulled her up in front of everybody and I said, ma'am, I go, this has happened where you didn't pass this. You didn't know how to tie your belt. I did this, and started stacking these things. And I said, with all of those things, I said, maybe in the beginning you might have thought this way. I don't know that you think this way now, but in the beginning, did you think I was mean? And she said, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And I go, do you now still think that I'm mean? And she said, no, not at all. You did that to help me become a better student.
Yeah.
And so just utilizing those realistic things, I think, helps the other kids to go, okay, he is doing it for my best interest. Most of them, I think, believe that. But it's because we've developed they respect my personality. And because they respect my personality, they respect my position.
Right.
And so I have a personal relationship with them more than I have a professional relationship with them, because they will bend over backwards for me because they like me and they want to get, I don't want to say my approval, but they want me to approve of them. They're not doing it solely for that, but they want to feel proud when I go, hey, great job. Right. Or I like that you did that. Does that all make sense?
It does. And I think of the word reverence, which I use a lot. And if people, if years and years ago, people would revere martial art teachers as number one fighters, tough guys, and, had some spiritual knowledge, leaders, right? With that black belt, with that authority came reverence, right? Nowadays in society, from parents down to kids, there's no reverence, right? They don't really look up to people like they used to. Because I most certainly would take your advice over some, and I'll use this as just a silly example, like a homeless person on finance, right? Like, not to put down homeless people or anything like that, but they're, like, I would go to Dwayne, you're successful. Can you tell me about business and how to do it? I wouldn't go to the non-successful person because I revere you or look up to you as a professional, as a business owner. Same thing goes with the martial arts, except a lot of people, even from the parents, they don't have that reverence. Like, I have a parent who was like a black belt in Taekwondo and her two kids train. She bows every time when she comes in the door, and her kids bow. And the way she speaks to us, Sensei, Renshi, Shihan, never, hey, Dylan. And I had a parent the other day piss me off, and he's Dylan. I'm like, his name is Sensei Dylan. It's not Dylan. You need to say Sensei Dylan to the parent. Oh, I didn't know. I'm like, well, what is he? Your son calls him Sensei Dylan. Why don't you? Right? Like, so there's got to be that level of respect. And I think that's missing, that reverence in the martial arts in general. And you have to breed it within your school, but it's not in society anymore. It's not that common.
Well, right. I mean, people are calling people by their first names all the time.
Yeah.
So,
right.
But you would not do that, or you shouldn't do that when you bring your kid to school to introduce them to their teacher. You don't say, now Jackie's your teacher. Right. It might be Miss Jackie because she's got a really difficult
last
name to pronounce. I get that. But even that, it's like make the kid work up to the level that they could actually talk or say that correctly, that last name correctly.
Yeah, and I just had a student who one of my black belts who competed this past weekend, and he came over to me. He's like, "Oh, Master Mike, who's my friend, he disqualified me out of the ring because I was being disrespectful. I'm like, well, were you? And he goes, well, respect comes both ways, he said. I go, no, it doesn't, my friend. You have to understand, you're a 16-year-old black belt. He's the master and the head of the ring. There is no mutual respect. You listen to what he says and you respect him, whether you like it or not. And you act with respect, whether you like it or not. And he's like, he had a little bit of a huff and a puff and he walked away. But then he went back and apologized to my friend because he realizes like his emotions get the better of him. So what do you do for to develop that culture of self-discipline or focus? And I know it's repetitive action you had said before. And
yeah, I've always had a difficult time articulating how I do it. I think I do it through joking. I do it through little mini Senate sermons. I literally will say to my students, look, I like to have fun, but I don't mess around.
Right.
And right now is the time we're not messing around.
I love it.
And normally that pretty much in most cases gets the action done that needs to get done.
Yeah.
I also expect them when I say something, so I'll correct something and they'll say, yeah, or whatever. I go, you mean yes, sir?
Right. Exactly. You got to ask for it and train.
Yes, sir. Correct. So I really try not to let the small little details slide.
Yeah.
To me, those, and again, that's another little sermon that I give them is, I tell them small details matter. I always tell them small details matter. And then I'll just tell them, how you do anything is how you do everything.
I love that. Dwayne, I don't know if you know this, but I have a little quote card on the side from our podcast and guests. And there's a lot of your quotes on there. So you wrote clear is kind. Another time, under stress, we digress. And certain times guests will say things and I write it down. So I think those quotes are very, very, very good. And Sensei Arango just wrote, who has been a guest on our show, he wrote the culture. It's the culture. Like how you act is your culture, right? How you allow people to act from the parents down. My good friend, Soke Andrew Stigliano, has a sign in his office. He says, United Martial Arts Centers. He goes, this is not McDonald's. You can't have it your way. There's a sign on the wall. I'd be afraid to put that up because people would be pissed at me. But I think that's good. And Sensei Arango wrote, we can be friendly, but we're not friends.
Yes. That's that goes to, I do the martial arts field trips a lot. So I remember we bring schools in, and this is probably 7 years ago. And by now was the very first time I heard it, but the teachers are bringing in their students and they're going, okay, come on in, friends.
Yeah.
Line up, friends, take your shoes off, friends. And I asked one of the teachers that I have known for a long time, I go, what's this friends stuff? She goes, we're required to call them friends now. I go, but they're not your friend. Right. And she goes, I know. I go, well, just so you know, I'm not going to call them friends here. And she goes, thank you.
Well, I think though, that's true though. Again, that's the culture. If you think the kids are your equal and you let them feel like they are, that's something that will probably work against you. Sensei Nathan Ingram just chimed in. By the way, he is the owner of Deadly Art of Survival magazine, the largest selling martial art magazine in the world. And he wrote, the behavior and discipline the instructors displays in front of the students and in life plays an important part. And I agree with that. And I have this dilemma. It's so hard for me. I want my old ways to be the only ways, right? The way I was 25 years ago, but I try to let my new instructors, their personality shine through. But at times, inevitably, that they're veering off path a little, right? Letting students, I had one of my instructors, I'm like, the students will joke with him and he'll joke with them back. And they'll hit him and touch him. In my upbringing, you never touched your sensei unless he said, grab me. And I used to do private lessons with Tanimura sensei in Japan. And it was just him and I, and he would have me throw him. Like, and I felt so uncomfortable. Like I felt like just touching him, unless he said grab me, and then he would put me in a hell of pain, right? But like I felt funny throwing him. I felt funny doing anything to him because he was like I would protect him with my life, right?
Sure.
And so like I felt very weird. But nowadays everything is very nonchalant, and I think it's the fault of many instructors, especially in other systems that allow the students to call them by their first name, to goof around and say things, and all weird kind of cultural stuff that I disagree with 100%.
Well, there was a study that was just done. I just saw it the other day, but and I can't remember exactly what all was in there, but basically we're almost last in first world country type places.
Wow.
That actually look at, what was it called? Being respectful.
Right.
That was like we were last on the list compared to these other countries.
Yeah.
That being respectful, but we were one of the highest with regards to being individualistic.
Right. Well, yeah, that comes
and being tolerant.
Right.
And so when you become very individualistic and then maybe even also tolerant, I think there's a thin line there that you got to be careful with, because you don't want to go into narcissism, but you also don't want to go into that everything is okay.
Right.
Everything is acceptable. So I think that's part of where maybe our problems have stemmed from, is that respect for others is not the highest on our list as Americans. And now we want our own students to show and demonstrate those, that type of respect.
Right.
But they're not getting that in any other, or in most areas of their life. Hopefully they're getting it at home, but maybe not. And then they're definitely not getting it at the school systems. They're not probably getting it when they're at the ball fields or whatever, or even hanging out with their friends.
However, I have to tell you, though, that a lot of my dojo parents are there because they want their kids to have the way they teach their kids to be reinforced. Like my one guy is doing a camp on Columbus Day, but he's making the announcement in class, we're doing a camp on Indigenous People Day. And I'm like, what the heck is Indigenous people? Why would just say Columbus Day? Well, that's not what it's called anymore. They changed that years ago. I go, if you go on the internet and you search Columbus Day, it'll say Columbus Day Indigenous People Day, or Indigenous People Day Columbus Day. They didn't exclude it because, just because someone told us that they should. I said, we have to be careful that we're not offending the people that are still wanting to call it Columbus Day as well. You know what I mean? Like,
we just say you're doing a camp on October 9th.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a weird thing, right? That new dynamic. But I can tell you, Rick Kellerman wrote, we're not friends, we're family. And I agree, but you have to be careful, because people don't treat their family with respect, right? They don't act respectful within their family. So like, I always look, my teacher, Tanimura Sensei, was one from Japan, traditional. If you didn't do what he said or act properly, you were done. That's it. Like, you maybe got a reprimand, you maybe got a few, explanations of why it's done this way. But if you continue to not want to adhere to those rules of the school, he would just basically say you're out and you're done. And now if it meant enough to you and travel to Japan and do all that stuff and you were going to lose that privilege, you corrected your behavior real quickly. Like in our schools, I don't know, a parent has another school on every corner. Wow, Shian is a tyrant. The way he acts, and he wants me to. I've had parents say, you just want to be revered. I go, I could care less about your reverence, but I want your child to learn what that means. Because if it comes from someone they respect, like you said before, the lesson is much more valuable, right? And they lose, not me. I don't care if I go home at night. I still watch my shows and eat my dinner the same way, right? I don't care whether you like me or respect me. I just want you to get the benefit from it.
Yeah. And, look, especially when I teach the white belts, I do a lot of communicating to the white belts when I'm teaching them, but then I also do a lot of communicating to the parents
Right.
when I'm teaching that class as well.
Hmm.
And the reason I do that, a couple of different reasons. One, they don't know what's on my mind.
Right.
Like they don't know why I'm doing things. And one of the things that I always do is I will teach the technique and then we do the reps together. And then I say, all right, now I want you to do it on your own.
Yeah.
And then I walk away. Well, that looks like I'm not paying attention sometimes to some parents. And then I'll just turn to the parents and I'll get them engaged and say, Mom and Dad, I want you to understand how I teach. One, I want to see if they can follow me while we're doing it together. But two, I need to see that they're able to pick up part of the information or all of it. I mean, I could care less which it is because I'm going to help them.
Yeah.
But two, I need to see that they're going to do the reps on their own.
Right.
Without me having to be on them, because if they won't self-practice, I'm not going to help them.
Right.
Or be able to help them.
Right.
And I said, then when I make a correction, I'm looking to see, okay, how do they take that correction? Do they take what I say? Are they defeated? Are they encouraged? Do they make the correction? All of those things I'm looking for right now, because that's going to determine whether we have a phenomenal relationship all the way up to black belt and beyond.
I love it.
And then I go back to my teaching because I want them to know why I'm not standing in front of their kid or why I'm not saying anything right now or why they see me just standing there out of the way. And it's not because I'm shirking my responsibilities or my duties. No, I want to test their kid.
Right.
I want to see what they can do without me. And the more that they can do without me, man, the faster and better and more information I can teach them.
Yeah. And you're also teaching them how to learn. Like like when I went into a seminar, and by the way, my teacher from Japan and my other teacher from the United States was very much like this too. But when I went to train with Steven Seagal in Colorado, there was a room filled with like 100 people. Of course, the anticipation of having him come out and, he walks out on the stage, we bow in, and then he calls up Matsuoka Sensei, who was his student from the movie Above the Law, where he would hit them with that clothesline. We call it a Riminage, and he'd flip his legs up and boom, hit the ground. So he calls him up. He demonstrates the technique one time. And then he turns to the crowd and he says, practice, dozo. And like, everyone's like, I didn't see it. I didn't get it. And he's like, just figure it out. He goes, look around you, who's got it, who doesn't have it, and keep on practicing until you get close. And when I come around, I'll make a minor correction. He goes, but I don't have to hand feed you every single detail because you won't remember it that way. It's like if I learned guitar and I learned a scale, in theory, I could read it on a piece of paper, but I still won't be able to play it unless I practice it continuously, right? And that's why my guitar instructor would go, Ali, help me help you, man. Are you wasting my time? Like, I just recently asked him if he would do a few lessons with me again. He's on tour right now with Trans-Siberian Orchestra. He goes, yeah, I'll put you in the list and we'll do a lesson here or there. And then he writes, I just hope you're ready for it. Like, he's not sugarcoating anything. Like, he doesn't want to play games. Like, it's literally, he could get, if I don't do it, someone else is going to jump in, right? Like, so he doesn't have to be like, hey, treat Ali really nice, make sure his ego's intact, make sure he's, you're good to him. He doesn't have to do that because he cares about the lesson and me listening. You know what I mean? So I love that. What do you think? Like, we got a lot of great comments so far. It's just amazing to see. And by the way, like people like Rick Kellerman, he's a Sifu in Kung Fu. Nathan Ingram, he was a full contact. They're making a movie about him right now. Full contact, no holds barred, bare knuckle fighter. He's a very traditional classical instructor. Of course, Anthony Harango, Sensei Harango from Martial Art Institute, they all have very successful histories, 50 years, 40 years, 30 years in the industry and, in teaching. So that goes to show that, they've been around the block. So what are some of your thoughts too on, we had said empowerment, mental resilience, right? Those words to me, and by the way, that book on jiu-jitsu talks about that a lot as well. I'll pull that up and put a link in for those that are interested. But like, how do you develop? And I don't know if our society is ready for this anymore. Mental resilience. Like, there's so many people who quit. Parents like, well, I did a questionnaire and some of them are like, I go, what would you do if your kid wants to quit? Oh, I would let them. I don't want to force them to do anything. Like that mindset is very prevalent in our society today. So what do you think about mental resilience?
It's very few and far between. I think we have a wrong definition of failure.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a wrong. I think we have a dislike for grit.
I love that word, by the way. That's becoming one of my favorite words now.
Mm-hmm.
Grit.
But I also think that, and we as kids we wanted this too. We wanted to become an expert without a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I think that's really where it's at. And if we can get the student and also the parent to understand that there's going to be work, there's going to be crying, there's going to be blood, sweat, tears, probably literally on all three of those.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's going to be sweat, maybe a little bit of blood. There should be, I think, some tears as you go through. But then, to know how to handle those things is really, I think, the apex of our training.
Right.
And I think we go through different, our students, and we did too. We just go through different things in our life. And I fall back on the fact that lessons are repeated until they're learned.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you keep running into the door, it's like, it's not the door's fault.
Right.
You got to figure out, what's the lesson I need to learn here? Oh, well, maybe I need to put a prop on the door so it stays open all the time so I don't hit it. Like, this is such a cliche. It's been used so many times. We're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, which then everybody says that's the definition of insanity. And it really is. But how do you convey that really to a student? Going, look, you're wanting this belt, but you can't earn this stripe.
Right.
So if you can't earn this stripe, what's the lesson that you need to learn here?
Right.
So for instance, I had a mom come up, introduce herself to me last night. I met her on the phone about a month and a half ago before her kid did a trial. She is the cousin of a family of black belts from years ago. And she told me about her daughter and, just a bunch of different things. And, she comes up to me and we're talking and in our conversation, because I know some mental disabilities, not the right, there's mental challenges and some things that her daughter is going to go through. Mm-hmm. And, look, I told her, I go, what better place to go through those challenges with people that actually, care about you. They care about your daughter. I know she's already done the trial. You're officially a member now. But during that trial, how many times did she have a breakdown? She goes, actually only once. Mm. And I go, how did that happen? Like, how did it go? She goes, your instructors were so patient with her. They were amazing, yada, 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 whatever.
Yeah.
And I go, see, that's what we want. We know that every single student is going to hit some sort of obstacle that we're going to be there to help them get through. But all we can do is help them get through. We can equip them, we can encourage them, but they have to walk through it, climb over it, go underneath it, whatever it is, but they are going to have to do it. Now, if they decide to do it, then what's going to happen is they're going to develop now confidence. So they're going to have the courage to do it. Then they're going to develop, that confidence because they did it. And now they have a new competency. So now their threshold has raised. And I said, guess what else is going to come next? It's going to be the next lesson. And she's going to have to learn how to navigate that next lesson. So she's going to have courage to get through that next lesson. And then from there, once she gets through it, she's moving forward, she's going to start to develop that confidence. And now she's going to have another competency that's just going to raise that bar even higher and higher.
I wrote that down, by the way. Courage, confidence, competency. I think that is like a golden nugget for today. That's a really good one.
Oh, well, thank you. That's not mine. That's Dan Sullivan's.
Yeah.
He's got the 4 C's, but in what we're talking about, the three of those four actually kind of fit what we're talking
Right.
about. But so it's not original to me, but it applies.
Yeah. I love also too, another great quote is, if you keep running in the door, is it the door's fault? But I have to say, Dwayne, I think that this is the dilemma. Like years ago when I taught, if I was hard on a student, the parent said thank you. Now, if the kid doesn't get what he wants, or he has a tough class, or he didn't get his belt, they're looking to quit and do something better, go to a different school even that will give them what they want, and so on. And all these lessons are lost. They're lost on this generation of people. And by the way, when I say generation, the now generation from 3 years old up to 40-year-olds, right? They're so used to whining and complaining to get their way and get it to be their way. And I have to say, there is a certain aspect of closed-mindedness in this society that we live in, where if it's not their way, they don't do it or believe it. Like, they're not open. Like, I have a student who's very, I don't want to say this in front of you, but he's very against religion. And he's like, it's fake. You're going to tell me that, there was a God and yada, yada, yada. I said to the person, I said, listen to me. It's perspective. He goes, it's just fake. Scientifically, the Big Bang. I'm like, dude, listen to me. If you're talking to a Christian and you tell them that God is fake, they're not going to listen to you. Just because you have a belief system, they also have a very strong belief system. And I said, you can't change people's belief system just because you don't agree with it. I said, you need to be open-minded to everything and let people enjoy what they enjoy and believe what they believe. It's not about making people believe what you want to believe only, right? But I do think we have a society filled with that, where, like, even a parent, like, they're so busy, so they bring their kid to martial arts and they pay the tuition. But they're so busy with other things that they don't find the time to put the effort forward to make their kids better at whatever they're involved with, right? Like, so you ever watch the show Fresh Off the Boat? It was like a Chinese family, and it was my wife
saw that. I've not seen it, but
my daughter and I watched the show, and it's the classic comedy routine about Asian families. Like the kid's playing violin while the mom's feeding him, and he's doing math, and she's running math problems. Like, that's how they're so hardcore to be the best and smartest at every single thing and excel above everyone else, right? I wish we had even a tad of that in our lives these days, because it's like, listen, come with your gear. Oh, we forgot it. I'm sorry, we didn't bring it. Like, okay, but now your kid, by the way, it makes our class twice as hard, because now we got to divide up all the forgotten kids that didn't bring their stuff. And we're going to run this class over there, this class over there. We're going to do everything special for the people that don't bring their stuff, let's say. And they get mad at me if I try to encourage them and say, listen, do this or do that. They get insulted by it and angry. So I stick to the risk of losing people like that because they don't want to listen. But I'm at the point in my life where I'm like, go somewhere else then.
I think, it goes back to what I've said before, clear is kind. So letting the parents know and understand what the expectations are, but also what the ramifications are, and follow through with whatever those ramifications are.
Right.
Second to that is, we pre-frame, or we try to do a very good job of pre-framing our parents, letting them know that, there's a time that your child's going to say that they want to quit. Here's a few reasons why they say that they're going to want to quit. It's boring. They don't want to do it anymore. They want to play with their friend. And so we let them know some of these reasons, and we kind of debunk all of them. And then we also talked about the fact that, I've never had a former student that did not reach black belt come up to me, or no, I've never had a former student who reached black belt come up to me and say, man, I wish my parents would have let me quit before I got my black belt.
Right. Of course.
But I always hear, man, the ones that didn't reach black belt, man, I wish my parents would not have let me quit.
I agree. 1,000%.
Parents on those. And then we give them different strategies to overcome those things.
Right.
And one of them is, look, one of the strategies I tell them is, I've had some parents say, look, we're a martial arts family. So this is what we do. I don't know how or why or whatever, but you're going to have to get over it, because this is what we do. And we're going to karate, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Right.
And then, with regards to your friend that, doesn't believe in God, I was just going to quickly say this in his defense is Christians also need to be open to listening to other people as well.
Yeah.
We can't be hard-nosed about those things.
Right.
Because that other person has, even if I disagree with the perspective, it's nice to hear the different perspective and understand why they believe what they believe. And I'll give you for instance. We do, because I run a Christian school. Mm-hmm. We have one of our patches that's on our left-hand side that's a Christian flag patch. Now, anybody can get the Christian flag patch. They just got to make a meeting with me. Of course, in that, I'm talking with them about what Christ did on the cross. And so this dad, and if it's a kid, there has to be one parent in there, because I'm not going to, be said that I'm trying to persuade some, you know what I mean? That type of stuff. So this dad was in there. I did all of it. And I said, hey, do you guys have any questions? And the dad said, well, I just want you to know I'm an atheist. And I told him, I said, yeah, I know. And he just kind of looked at me like, really, And the only reason I knew is because his wife told me before we had the meeting, maybe like 3 days prior to that, because she's Catholic. She's married to an atheist. So she wanted me to know this, right?
Yeah.
And so I said, I know. And I go, what's your question? And he said, Abraham? God told Abraham to sacrifice his son. And I go, yeah, he did. I go, what's your problem with that? And he goes, well, he told him to kill his own son. I said, yeah, what's your problem with that? And he goes, he told him to kill his own son. I said, well, first off, you have a problem with a God that you don't even believe in.
Right.
Number one. I said, number two, even if that wasn't the case, notice God didn't ask you to do that.
Right.
He asked Abraham to do that.
Yeah.
Knowing that Abraham would, but also that God would provide a lamb to be slain instead of.
Right.
So, I listened. I wanted to see where he was coming from. I wanted to understand what it was before I was even going to say anything with regards to it.
Right.
But I thought that was an interesting question.
Yeah. Well, we have a kamidana and a showman, the front wall with the house, and it's got Buddhist houses on it, and we bow in and out. So I was saying to the students, where one of my students who's a reborn Christian, not reborn, he's a very devout Christian, was in the class as a helper. And I said to the kids, I go, this is called the kamidana, the house of God, and we bow to it. I said, but remember, everyone in this room has different gods. Maybe you believe in Buddha, Judaism, Christianity, Muslims. I said, you bow to your God. And then we bowed the class out and they left. And I said, it's not really a religious thing, but I'm just giving you some context, right? So no one can tell you what to believe is my point. So afterwards, he's like, can we have a talk, my student? You do realize there's only one God, and what you're doing is I'm like, listen, stop. Don't preach to me, please. I'm teaching my lessons. You extract what you want to take out of it. You don't have to believe it. I said, but I have to talk. I'm teaching people of many different faiths. I'm not trying to convert them like you are to your faith. So you got to understand, I have a different path to walk than maybe you would. So don't tell me, like that kind of thing. And I'm open to hear him. And another 20 minutes of listening why he thought it was wrong. But I try to say, you also have to have an open mind as well. Right. So let's quickly go in. Like we're like, it's crazy how fast things go. And by the way, we have another great comment from Soke Andrew Stigliano. Wise words, great chat. We work harder to ensure their success and understanding, but you can't fix selective silliness. What he's trying to say is you can't fix stupid.
I like selective silliness, though.
I like Xian Andrew, and I know him. I know in his head he's going, you can't fix stupid, but how can I write this so it's more politically correct? That's important what he had just said, though, too. People will. My ex-wife, my daughter's mom, who are still like a good friend of mine, we say that she taught me this one term, that perception is reality, but their perception is their own reality. So, I mean, you could see it in politics. One person you ask, do you like Trump? I hate him. let him rot in jail. I love him. He's the best savior to the planet. Like there's so many different polar opposite opinions. We're never all going to be on the same page, but I only wish that more of us would be willing to see the other's point of view rather than dividing a wall between us and saying, I'm right and you're wrong. Let's see each other's perspectives. And I only wish too, Dwayne, that parents would take the time to educate themselves on the tools that they have by having their kids in our martial arts. That's what
I tell the parents all the time when we do our mat chats. It's like, parents, get off your phone, listen to what's being said, utilize this in your dinner conversation,
right,
when we're talking about this topic, because you're wasting that opportunity.
Right.
You're trying to outsource your child rearing. And I think a lot of parents do this. They try to outsource their child rearing to the school, to the martial arts school, to the baseball field, to the soccer field. Like, right, he's yours right now. She's yours right now. You raise them. No, you sit there and you as a parent, you are the primary teacher. Like, you're the principal, and you're allowing other teachers to speak life into your kid.
Right.
But as the principal, you should also monitor what's being said, reinforce the stuff that you actually are like, yes, that's what I want my kid. So, you heard Shihan. Did you hear Shihan Ali tonight talk about, or what was that Shihan Ali was talking about, about, whatever it was. What did you think about that? Or what was I know you didn't get a chance to say your answer. What would have your answer been? Like, just be inquisitive.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do.
You're right, though. Like, society is filled with filling the calendar, right? Like, so like they want, the parents especially want their children to have experiences. So they want to make, like, if they didn't get a chance to do martial arts and soccer and baseball and t-ball and football and hockey and piano, they want their kids to do all that stuff. But you can't be great at 50 different things. So they don't, and then their kids try and dabble. I always say they're dabbling until they finally magically shine at one activity. And then but half the time it takes, they're out of high school now in college and they still haven't found their thing. When if a parent forced their kid to stay in a particular activity, that lesson, that structure, that mindset will have formulated their life forever. Like I know, like my daughter, she had to listen to a lot in college, right? And a lot of her professors were very left-winged. And my daughter would stay silent. Like, she would never debate, be contradictory, because she was afraid that she'd be penalized for having a different opinion. Even to the fact where her roommates were one-sided and she was on a different side, her and her best friend would talk in code so that they wouldn't get ostracized by the other students in the dorm, because she was afraid of the ramifications. So I get that, but I think that we need to get more buy-in and from the parents so that we can do our job better. If they bought into what we did fully, oh my God, the results would be tremendously different.
Unequivocally, yes.
Yeah, don't you see that in your school? Like, the really awesome kids are the ones that come more, do more, parents are more into it, they communicate with you better, and so on and so forth. Like, I sent out a questionnaire to hundreds of people and I only have gotten 20 responses so far. And every time I push it again, I'll get 1 or 2 more responses. But like, there's a good pocket of people that they're hiding in the shrubs right now and they're not going to answer. I remember what you're doing. So we got to, I hear you.
Yep.
So, but yeah, there's something that we need to really, really try to get clear. Like, I love your clear as kind.
Clear as kind. I just go back to what we talked about. I've said this many times. You agree. We are the last line of defense. I think, as a sport, as a way of life. I mean, really, really are. And I believe that we are more important than ever now as school owners in order to make a difference, not only in kids' lives, especially in their lives, but even young adults and adults.
I agree 1,000%. And I know you got to get going. You have an appointment. So I hope that everyone really enjoyed this talk. This is a topic that you and I could do over and over and over again because it's just so powerful. So if you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up. Please follow us on our website at schoolownertalk.com, here on Facebook and on iTunes as well. And thank you so much for being a part of our podcast. And Dwayne, I always you're a part of my life every week. I'm excited to be able to be with you, and you motivate me. So thanks for being my friend, and I appreciate you as well.
You bet, man. Have a great one.
All right, dude. Take care. Thank you. Bye, guys. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Martial Arts School Owner Talk podcast. This would not be possible if it weren't for the support of our amazing sponsors. Please check out Elite Insights for all your website needs. They can be reached at eliteinsights.com. Add Health Coaching, helping school owners create a new and easy to implement revenue stream for your school. Visit addhealthcoaching.com. Lead Hunter Media, your online digital marketer and content provider. Visit leadhuntermedia.com. Academy Kings Growth Consulting and Management Group. They can be reached at academykings.com. And Spark Membership, hands down the best martial arts software for school owner management on the planet. They can be reached at sparkmembership.com. We will see you next time.